good to go? I'll open this town council meeting for March 21st. Let's please stand for the pledge of allegiance. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All you, Twyla.
Roll call. Counselor Albert.
Here.
Counselor Kobe.
Here.
Counselor Crawford.
Here.
Counselor Lunt.
Here.
Counselor Ward.
Here.
Counselor Brunel.
Here.
And Counselor Kraft is excused.
Yes. He has the flu.
Oh, bummer.
First item.
Is the public hearing. Oh, good news and recognition. Hang on. There we go. Good news and recognition.
Well, we're 3/4 of the way through the state the unified game against Oak Hill right now. Lisbon is up 27-20, so I'm hopeful that we'll be seeing another state game in Windsor Thursday night if everything goes according to plan.
Nice.
So they are the number 4 seed and Oak Hill is number 1, so keep your fingers crossed and moving right along. Lisbon's up by 10 now.
Nice.
Keep it moving.
Next item is the public hearing for the pawn shop, Daniel Miller Jr., doing business as Double Diamond Pond.
I didn't open the floor for the public hearing if anybody wants to speak on behalf. Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing.
Next item is the amendment to Appendix C fee schedule, public hearing.
I'll open the public hearing on the fee schedule. If anybody would like to speak on that? Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing. Moving right along.
Audience participation and response for agenda items.
If anybody would like to speak for the council, feel free to do so. Violet, no? Come on, Mark. Nobody? All right, moving right along.
Consent agenda. Any counselor wishing to have an item removed may do so now. Order 2017-63 to approve the accounts payable and payroll warrants 114, 115, 116, 117, and 118, along with the minutes of March 7, 2017, and a pawn shop license for Daniel Miller Jr. doing business as Double Diamond Pond.
I need a motion.
I'll make the motion.
I need a second.
Second.
We got it. All in favor?
Order passed 6-0.
Moving right along. The next item, Kelly Park drainage is coming on.
Right. Under council orders, ordinances, and resolutions, the council would like to take a new item up instead of the Kelly Park drainage easement. They'd like to take up the TIF public hearing for Kelly Park if there are no objections. Seeing none?
I'd like to make a motion to have the TIF for the Kelly Park hearing on 4/4.
Second.
All in favor?
Order passed 6-0.
For the public, the Kelly Park drainage easement item is actually an MDOT item now, and not something that actually has to come before us. So, Mr. Kelly is actually currently working with Diane on something with them, so it doesn't actually have to come
Bless you.
before us. Moving right along, Twyla.
Order 2017-65, which is an ordinance for the fee schedule amendment. This is a second reading. It would require a roll call vote.
I saw one thing, I think. Sorry, Mark.
Page.
Page 6. Actually, it's page 32 in the packet. Page 6. Getting up. Summer day camps. I thought we talked about putting something in there that it was for the actual session. 350.
Guess Jody forgot it. So,
Basically, the way that this reads is it's either a 7 or 8 week program, according to what Mark presented last time. The fee that's actually paid is $350 for that entire period of time.
for the whole session.
Right. So if we could just clarify that for the,
Add the amount of time, so it's 7 weeks, it's a 7 week.
yes,
5 day
just
program.
something to know that they're paying for the entire session.
So you can put that in your motion when you
Yep,
make it.
absolutely. That was the only thing that I saw. Everything else was, as we talked about at the last meeting, bringing the parking back on and, adding the per season for football and all the other items that we talked about, but that was the one that just came off the page. So, does anybody else have anything that, I know we delved into this, but that was just the one piece that I saw that was missing. That said, I entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion.
I need a second.
I'll second.
All in favor?
No, it's a
This'll be
roll call vote.
call.
Ordinance.
So this is a motion to adopt the fee schedule with the additional language, 7-week session for the entire program under summer day camps. All those in favor would be Counselor Albert,
Yes.
Crawford,
Yes.
Crafts is absent, Counselor Ward,
Yes.
and Counselor Lunt,
Yes.
and Counselor Brunel,
Yes.
and Counselor Kobe.
Yes.
So we do have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 yeas and 0 nays. The order did pass.
Next item, Clive.
Order 2017-66, ordinance marijuana moratorium. This is the first reading. A roll call vote is required.
Everybody has before you, if you haven't had a chance to read it, the moratorium that was handed out at the MMA that Mr. Fellis provided from the planning board was seen by legal, and the verbiage has been updated to include language to town council and those kind of items. Did I miss anything on that?
No.
That said, anybody have an issue with content? I'll entertain a new motion.
I'll make a motion.
Need a second?
I'll second that.
Do you have any
Roll call.
Roll call again.
dialogue beforehand? Anybody got anything? Roll call.
Okay. Counselor Kobe,
Yes.
Counselor Brunel,
Yes.
Counselor Lunt,
Yes.
Counselor Ward,
Yes.
Counselor Crafts is absent, and Counselor Crawford,
Yes.
Counselor Albert.
Yes.
So there's 6 yeas, 0 nays. Order passed.
Beautiful. So moved.
Order 2017-67, and the ordinance, Chapter 46, Street Acceptance Standards Amendment. This is the first reading. Roll call vote required.
Is anybody gonna pinch hit for Mr. Fellows tonight?
My fault.
Better take one for the team.
I
Love it.
am.
Let's do it.
Good
Bill,
evening,
who got the Schwitz
counselors.
straw, you or Scott?
Yeah, me. Good evening, counselors. Again, I'm Karen Paradise, Vice Chair of the Planning Board. And regarding the street acceptance, during the course of a planning board case recently, we became aware that our street acceptance requirements were different than road requirements in subdivision. So we went through that and have suggested to the council that you allow accepted roads of 24 feet wide rather than what the 30 feet that is required. Have spoken to the Public Works and to the Fire Department and the Police Department. They don't have an issue or haven't given us any issues that they have with the accepting of the 24 feet. And where that is what most of the subdivisions in town are, and 24 feet is an acceptable distance. And we suggest that you make that change.
Reading the language, the first, if we're editing.
Of course, I don't have
Where-
copies of that.
Do you have copies?
No, I do not.
Here.
Thank you, I'm sorry. Thank you.
It references a highway department.
Yeah.
We don't have a highway department. Can we make that, please, PW?
Certainly.
If I'm looking and remembering my notes, there are a couple of dates referencing 1969.
January 1st.
Is that a key date? Is it relevant or?
That, believe it or not, is when the road acceptance standards were written. We actually have one planning board member that was on the planning board at that time.
So, what I was trying to get my head around, I I know we're seeing the updates with the strikeouts and the additions associated, just trying to read it without all of that in it. Under the second condition, does the 1969 make sense, or does it need to be stricken? I think I'm reading it wrong. Any street or way which through extended public usage and prolonged maintenance by the town PW department prior to 1969 may with the approval of the planning board be recommended for acceptance by the town council. The way that I'm reading that, what I believe the intent of the revision is to actually give you the discretion to be able to deviate from that, to refer it back to the other section 66-147 that I've since seen, and she sent us today because it was kind of missing. If you're gonna reference to a document, I'd like to know what that document is to know that the content's correct. I'm trying to figure out if, does that prior to 1969 make sense if we're asking to be able to deviate to the other section from that second point?
I mean, I think the 1969 is just grandfathering the, really old roads, like,
Yeah.
narrow streets in town and stuff, if there's,
Like
Yeah,
prior to
something that
it
was already-
being accepted in 1969, any existing roads that weren't in compliant were grandfathered. Anything beyond that has to comply.
Correct,
Right.
had to be the.
because some streets, in town don't have 50 feet of potential right-of-way to be there, you'd be in people's houses.
Right. I get that in the first point.
Right.
You're absolutely right, because that's where the building standards kick in. It's quite literally, number 2, in any street or way through extended public usage and prolonged maintenance by the town PW department. I would
Right.
strike that and go right straight with,
But-
may with the approval of the planning board be recommended for acceptance by the town council. I don't know if that date
I
is
think,
relevant at the second time.
I think the current practice would be in the first clause here, in the first sentence there, and then this part is just if there was something that was existing, it was built in 1860 and we wanted to adopt it as a town road, we could with
Even if it
lesser
wasn't 24
standards.
feet.
Right, because there might not be, if it's, dirt road between two houses somewhere and we wanted, for some reason, to make it a public street, that we'd have that option.
But if we take that out, then we wouldn't.
Right.
Okay.
That's why it's there. That's why it was put
Okay,
there in
I got it by
1969.
that. But I guess what I'm trying to put my head around is,
The way, the
is
way
there
it's
any,
worded?
is there any public land that we actually don't already have that's already been accepted, so it would relate at all? Do there any,
I mean, there might be. We'd have to have a catalog of,
Yeah,
with
what-
something that's, like the issue we had with that plowing that road there, where it's,
Right.
something like that could be, it's been used as a public way, but
A
it's not
half
actually,
Casey Street? Is that what
right,
you're
but
talking
it's, but it's not actually a town road. If we want to do it, if
There's
some point we wanted to
there's a
adopt
handful
it.
of them around town,
Okay.
Right.
that,
I think it's just
some of them are called lanes, and some of them you don't even know they're
they're
there.
not, they're not public, but we actually have
Well, been
involvement
using
where
them.
we may be dealing with it. Okay, I buy that.
Right,
That's
and there's
why I was-
right of ways and stuff across people's
It was
land
just the
like that.
repeating it on the second part with, I know the intention was to actually give you the discretion to be able to go to the 24 feet based on your guys' recommendation.
Yes.
I was just trying to figure that
Yep.
double occurrence. I had what was the second note there? I know you can't read my chicken scratch. Let me- No, that was it. And, I saw the 66-147, because again, when you're gonna have all the strikeouts from all of the languages in here, you wanna know that the other schedule picks it up to be able to put those conditions in play. So I've seen that, so we're good.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Anybody else on that? Basically, I'll go slightly out of order. Planning board report for tonight.
Excuse me.
This is the lion's share of it. I'm just, there's not gonna be a report. That's why this is on the agenda, because that was the one piece that they did, because it was a key piece at the planning board meeting that Thursday night for the acceptance of the Kelly Park. This action that they're asking us to vote on to make that acceptance is a integral piece for the 24-foot roads on the back two parcels for that development. Just to bring the rest of you guys on, that's why it's sitting before us here tonight.
Because they determined there was a discrepancy in the two
Right.
ordinances don't match
Our
with each other.
ordinances don't
Yep,
agree
no,
with each other.
get it.
One says 30 feet, another one says 24, so it's,
Right.
you know,
So what are we making them, all 24?
24, right?
Okay.
With connector roads with the approval from the planning board, it all has to go through them to be able to revert back to us for compliance from the street acceptance. Right now, the street acceptance has a higher standard than a subdivision requirement. Did I get that even close, Don? See, I'm getting better on my notes, you can tell him.
So why are we taking out like the construction standards then?
You gave them to us today, I didn't print it to bring it to me.
And I don't think I printed it either. Want to go in and print one?
Please. When you see that all the strikeouts, the
Mhm.
language that's actually referred to in section 146, 147, Division 3, minimum right of way, all of this strikes out because it refers back to that other document. that's
Oh,
picked
okay.
up, and it's all spelled out in that table,
Gotcha, gotcha.
and that's, shows the 24-foot standards versus the 30.
The 30, okay.
And, you know, a long-winded discussion made a little shorter. There are applications where it makes more sense if we're gonna be maintaining these, because there's less cost paving a 24-foot road than a 30-foot road.
If you're dealing with small roads in, you know, residential subdivisions, you don't need 30-foot, you know, highway.
Right,
Less overall maintenance costs over time.
right. So, it'll make a little more sense when Diane gets back with that, but what the intention is to shorten this section to pick up where the subdivision section criteria
So
actually takes.
was this section just duplicative of the other table and the other document?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes. Like I said, it was counterproductive to give us just this piece without seeing what you're referring me to, or wanting me to strike this.
Right, because otherwise it looks like we're suddenly being very much more permissive.
Right. Cool.
So this is a table.
It's just one copy.
Okay, so it's all one.
So basically, the standards that you're looking for are spelled out in that table that actually pick up for the stricken language from this. Did I miss anything on that, Karen?
Yeah, the only thing I notice is it doesn't talk about the surface of the road, or I don't see water drainage system here, which is mentioned in the crossed out section.
Is that the chapter 66, Article 3, Division 3? Because there's two
Okay.
chapters.
Where's that?
Is that
Yeah, okay, yes.
maybe the
That could be in
second-
there, yeah.
Could be in that second piece.
Because I noticed the table is a little bit more permissive than some of the standards here, like also the minimum grade is 0.5% instead of 1%. And I don't know how big a difference that makes in terms of water flow off the surface, but,
Can either of you guys speak to the fact that there's secondary table for stuff coming off?
yeah.
No?
Right.
Right. lion's share associated with that is that we had more aggressive standards
In this one,
in this one that were more in play. Is the short version of what I remember from the dialogue.
So just so I'm understanding and making sure I'm clear on this, right now our concern is that there's nothing there expressly talking about drainage on the roadway. But I did hear you mention, Karen, under your breath there, that Public Works would have to sign off on the roadway. Therefore, would it be, and this is just me speaking out loud, would it be implied that they would have to green light and say, well, there is drainage adequate before we'll sign off on that roadway? That's just my take on it. I think if we want to add language that supports that, I'm all in favor, but I think that's my take on it when I read it anyway. That was implied that the road's not going to get, the final approval comes down to Public Works. If Public Works sees a lack of drainage, they're probably going to be saying, yeah, no, we can't do anything until that gets done.
But do they have a requirement on what's considered adequate drainage?
They should, yep.
Because, I mean, I don't want to just say it would be discretionary and not have something in writing that they would have to follow, saying it needs to be this, this, and that. And then we just have anybody who's in that seat saying, oh, well, I think it's adequate. Charter and ordinances say that I had that authority, and then we end up with issues later
No,
on.
I agree with you 100%. I think that's why we have to, if nothing else, determine if there's something hard and fast, or there, and I imagine there must be, but again, not being an engineer on what's acceptable drainage and what isn't, what is PW, specifically the director of PW, what's their responsibility there in that, so. So if we want to make sure that there's nothing there that covers that end, or at least if it's something that's spelling it out, we know it and it's not discretionary, as you pointed out, then we would then need to talk about whether or not we want to improve the language to include something like that.
So, for a first reading, there's no official vote, it's to move it forward. The second reading, which comes to roll calls, right?
Yeah, and if you do the first reading, I would say in your motion to change the Highway Department to Public Works.
Agreed. What I was gonna say next is to align for the second reading that we would have at the next meeting, bring in the supporting documents in 66-147, Chapter 66, Article 3, Division 3, to make sure that the stricken language is either covered or not necessary. And that way we could actually look at the content associated with that, so we're not striking something that
We really need.
not
Right.
missing.
Right.
So when you see that full documentation, we'll be able to have a better opinion. And at that point, maybe in the new business this week, the planning board is do that same comparison and see if they're comfortable with the content as well, just to hear it from a secondary source that's more a little bit in the know. I get the intention, I understand it, I know why we were actually doing it. It's just the fact that making sure that something that's stricken doesn't actually have merit. Does that make sense?
sometimes when you're dealing with developers, you really want to have it in writing, so they, don't decide, I'm gonna cheap out on every little way and
Right.
push and push to get every little thing I can.
And then it
Any-
comes back
anything-
and bites us.
Anything we leave open to interpretation will definitely be interpreted however they need it to be interpreted.
Right, or in a court.
Right, right.
Right.
Let's just spell it out.
Let's not be the poster child, please.
Just, let's just spell it out so there is no doubt.
Okay, so if that's the case, we don't have to have it, we get the action.
You still need to do a first reading if you're planning to adopt this tonight for the first reading, or you can just have it first reading next time.
I wouldn't have any issue adopting it with the first reading, it's just knowing the second reading that we will be potentially making some change based on if
I'm
there's
thinking
anything
that's
to try.
And if
substantial,
it's,
though, right?
it will be substantial, then we'll have to start over.
Right.
So do we want to hold the first reading? then?
Yeah.
Let's postpone the first reading until we see the full content to be
Yep.
able to weigh in. I think it's better to delay the 2 weeks rather than impede it and then just lose 2 weeks plus 4 more.
Measure twice, got once.
Agreed. Moving right along.
All right.
Next item?
Is under other business, council committee reports.
So the first one's me, and I'll tell you I got nothing new on the school right now.
Planning board, you heard it. The two things they took action on, we already took care of early on our agenda. You're up, sir. Water Department.
Let's see. There's not a whole lot to tell. There's a workshop. I was just going to see the. Sorry. Right now, the commissioners are looking into ideas for a memorial for the late Mr. Bill Bauer. And there is a workshop for the 27th at 5:30 at the Water Department. And the next meeting is April 10th at 5:30.
Elise,
So, I've not been to the last meetings because they've been conflicting with either my own personal stuff or we've had council workshops. But I have kept up on email, and so the last thing that I saw that we were working hard to try to get an understanding of how the layout's going to go. We're trying to stay on the timeline that we have. I might defer to you if you want to jump up here, sir. Or madam. I was looking at you, actually.
Oh, you want Scott?
No.
Hey,
Scott,
that's fine.
Scott, no. You go ahead. You can jump in there as well, Karen.
Yeah. No, we spent the majority of our last meeting talking about some items in town that could use a little bit of attention. Unfortunately, there's been quite a bit of graffiti around town, and it's upsetting to people, and people are worried about property values. So we're talking about that and wondering how we can go about getting that removed and money for that, because, of course, time is money, and we need, we've had some volunteers that have done it, but, some of the graffiti is on private property, and, got to worry about ownership and that. But that's what we spent our last meeting talking about. And, of course, the facade grants, we have had 5 applications and 5 or 6. We had 6? 6, I believe we have all approved now. 2 will be coming to you next week, because we just approved them the other night. And I think that's where we're at this point. We've been busy with the 2 grants, the facade grant and the downtown revitalization grant, which we're excited to see, and be some really great stuff happening come spring now. I know it's technically spring, but when the weather starts acting like spring, we'll be seeing a lot of really good stuff. And
We're doing well on the timeline for the improvements that are going to be made over by
by Millers?
Double Diamonds, Double
Yes.
Diamond and Millers, and over by Roma Joe's.
Yes.
Specifically, when everything looked good on the timeline there. I know that we had tried to kind of move some things around and try to meet the requirements, because we had a couple of things that were not necessarily lining up. But I think everything with that has worked itself out as well.
Yes,
right?
we're waiting for the bids to come back in, and we'll get it going.
Excellent. Thank you,
Okay,
Karen.
sure.
Counselor Escher.
Well, I haven't had a chance to touch base with Mark Stevens here, but hopefully he's around here somewhere and I can get a hold of him. I had the same problem with the conflicting meeting times. They hold their meeting right before ours, so
Okay.
haven't had a chance to get in there yet.
I haven't had a chance to touch base with Mark. Same thing, conflicting schedule.
County, nothing. That's pick up until 5.
Library, I know they're in the transition to their new system with the state system there, and I'm not sure exactly which stage they're at. Last time I talked, the state was having issues and they were backed up behind schedule. So Diane, have they
Yeah, I think
that
they
turned
set
on
a
now?
date that they're gonna go live. I think it's sometime in May.
in May? Okay, because they talked
It might
about
even be
February or
April.
something at one point. But I know the state was way behind,
May.
so that'll be nice once it's up and running.
Yeah. You know, I was gonna say that, but I was like, I'll give him a break. I'm glad you did that. I'm glad you did.
Town managers report.
Today, we started union negotiations for one of our bargaining units. You'll hear a little bit about that later.
Okay.
Tomorrow, we're meeting with USDA Rural Development on grant and funding opportunities and the actual application for the sewer projects.
Thanks.
Next week, I've got training. I'll be out of the office 1 full day, and then part of a day, Tuesday and Wednesday. And once again, I'd just like to thank the Public Works for their hard work and all the hours they put in during the last snowstorm. 22 inches, it was a lot, but I just want to commend them for their hard work. And then the Moxie Building project, that is out to bid now,
Excellent.
so we're making progress.
Beautiful. Next item, Paula.
Is the 2017-18 municipal budget presentation.
Yay!
You have the floor, Lee.
So, I passed out some more documents tonight that I put in front of you. One is just a budget to actual. It shows the budget year 2016, so you can have a comparison on what our actual was the last fiscal year. And then it shows where we are right now for 2017 and then what the 2018 request is. It's a little bit different than the report that I had at the back of your binder. Just additional information. And then I also passed out a list of budgetary items in this budget that I feel you could look at and fund a different way than through the budget. And we'll talk about those as we go through the budget, as we hear from the different department heads. So I think the first thing I want to do is refer to my letter. And tonight is the very first draft of the fiscal year 2018 municipal and wastewater expenditure budgets for your review and consideration. This budget proposes to keep municipal services as status quo, and it does not include any revenues to date, but I hope to have something for you next week on the revenue side. The budget. The municipal budget, excluding the county tax and the local contribution to the school department, totals $9,517,004. This is an increase over the current fiscal year budget for those services just for the municipal service, excluding the ones I just listed. It's an increase of $1,530,577, or 19.2% over the current fiscal year budget. The town share of the county budget has an increase of $35,524 over the current fiscal year. Wages and benefits out of this $9.5 million budget totals $5,021,278, comprising of about 52.8% of the budget. The total wage increase is $129,014. Total benefit increase is $191,896. In this budget, we included a 2% cost of living and a couple of other wage adjustments, including adding back in the lieutenant's position under the police department. The 2% cost of living adjustment amounts to $53,731. Also on the benefit side, we estimated a 9% cost increase in the health insurance premiums beginning January 1st through June 30th of next year. We already know what the first half of our fiscal year budget is. It's a 9% increase, and we're just estimating the same thing for next year. As you look through the different departments under health insurance, you're going to see some departments have larger increases than that. And the reason for that is we had a good number of employees this year at open enrollment decide to take the health insurance, where in previous years they had the buyout. So that's a huge increase and a huge impact to the budget. And also some of the positions that were vacant that we filled, a lot of those employees that had those positions had the buyout, and the new employees that we hired have taken the family plan. So you're going to see a big increase on the health insurance side because of those factors. And at open enrollment every year, they have the chance to come on or go off our insurance. So the town will be negotiating all 3 collective bargaining agreements. They all expire June 30th of 2016, and we're in the process of doing that right now. Also included in this year's budget are the capital requests for operational needs and planning for future by funding capital improvement reserve accounts. And this came out of all the different meetings that we had with it. At that meeting we had with all the department heads, and I've included it all in the budget so you can see what the actual budget would look like. In this budget, we also combined the Parks and Recreation departments into one operating department. So when you look at the I couldn't change the titles, but they will change when we go into the new system. So I put it all under the rec department, so you'll see a large increase under rec, but when you go to the parks budget, you'll see the 0. That's because everything was moved over. So we will name Department Parks and Recreation under the new software when we migrate to Munis. But I wanted to at least make that change in the Trio system so that it will flow through the next budget, the next software. Some of the significant non-salary and wage increases include technology, service, and software. Currently in this budget, I have the whole amount for the Munis system, which is about $87,000. I have not decreased the Trio side yet, because I don't know, I think some of the modules I'm gonna wanna purchase at least a 6-month, especially on the payroll, because we're gonna be using their payroll for the first 6 months of the new year. Whether I go and do another whole year on the payroll, just so that we have that information as we migrate, I don't know yet. But some of the modules we can get by for half of a year, so I'll be reducing that budget at some point, but I'm just not there yet. It's too early in the process to make that decision. And then we have computer equipment, $50,000. We'll get into more detail on what these are. Town buildings, we've got $20,000 for capital improvement. The town clerk, capital improvement of $30,000. As I stated earlier, the police department, we've restored the police lieutenant, so the salary and benefits come to $102,000. And I have motor vehicles, capital improvement, fire department, we have the annual capital projects reserve. And then what we also did was we budgeted another $75,000 so we could start that capital improvement budget to go towards replacing his ladder truck, which we haven't been doing. Public Works equipment, heavy machinery. The equipment, I've got $332,500, heavy machinery of $40,000. And under Public Works winter contracted services, that's what we have put in. We think would be a good amount to hire somebody to do the sidewalks. We will get a better price for you on that, but right now it's a placeholder in the budget instead of budgeting for a new sidewalk machine. And then the buildings include the salt shed for $250,000, solid waste capital improvements of $30,000, the recreation department, the playground for $20,000, debt service lease agreements is an increase of $81,838, and that's because some of the new debt we just added, and the capital outlay bonds, which includes the new $1.5 million for the public work, for the paving. Some of the unknowns right now are the town insurances. It's too early to find out what the increase is, so I estimated a 5%. I don't expect it to go up to that, but I put it in as a placeholder, and I'll work on that as we get further on into the year. And just to recap, Lisbon's unassigned fund balance right now is $2,755,000. That has improved over the prior year. And it's essential that we do maintain adequate levels of unassigned fund balance to mitigate financial risks that can occur from unseen revenue fluctuations and unanticipated expenditures. The fund balance also provides cash flow for the town's general operations, which will reduce the town's need for a tax anticipation note and the interest and borrowing costs associated with the note. We're in pretty good shape. We don't have to go down that road. The council strives to maintain an appropriate level of unassigned fund balance. However, if the council chooses to use a portion of the unassigned, I would recommend its use for non-recurring capital costs. And that's what this other document is. It shows the fund balance, what the 16% of our current general fund operating budget, and the excess or use of unassigned fund balance in the amount of approximately $424. That's keeping 16%. That's using the amount over the 16%. You can use anywhere between 12 and 16. This amount of $424 just represents what's in excess of 16. I've listed some of the items here that I feel are not going to be reoccurring, and that's what you would probably want to use your fund balance on. which would be your, under the town buildings, the generator pad and infrastructure. That grant that we receive for the generator can only go towards the generator, so we're gonna have to come up with the cost of the infrastructure and putting in the pad for the generator. As, you know, that would be just a one-time expense, we'd never have to see that again in the budget. The same for Twyla's high-density storage. We anticipate that being at 30,000, and we don't anticipate her having to get that again. So that would be another use of the unassigned fund balance. The police capital improvements, upgrades to the communications equipment that Mark talked about during that meeting, that would be another one-time expense. And then I listed all the public works items here totaling $332,500. And outside of the plow truck, probably most of these wouldn't be reoccurring for any time soon, but, and then the public works salt shed, $250,000, that's another one time. I don't anticipate we'd even have to start a program to put towards another one in any near future. And then the recreation playground. So you add all of that up, it comes to $686,000, and you still have the use of the overlay that we haven't tapped into of $200,000 that's in this current budget that we would lapse to unassigned fund balance, and then you could reassign it. So that brings the total down to $486,000. That would really be your impact on the unassigned fund balance, once you add the $200,000 into that $2,755,000 for the year. And then we deferred till the next budget, fiscal year 19, the fuel pumps at the Public Works garage. We are gonna have to do that in fiscal year 19, but we've deferred that till that time. So that's kind of an overview of this budget, but I've given you some options to think about. But everything that's on this page here, with the exception of the fuel pumps, is currently in this budget.
I'll entertain questions on content. I know it's
Early.
same, it's the municipal version of last week's discussion.
Oh, yeah.
So, first out of the gate next week is,
It's going to be, library, police, and fire.
so,
And then on April 11th will be your big departments, Public Works, Solid Waste, Wastewater, Town Buildings, and Technology.
so that said, I would entertain you guys coming to the workshop next meeting and, be prepared to actually talk about what we intend to actually cut
That's on the 11th?
or consideration, right? Yes.
It's March
No.
28th.
28th.
March 28th, sorry.
Next
So,
Tuesday.
That's next to, basically every Tuesday.
Oh.
from here
Every
on in this
Tuesday till
fall.
like June.
My bad.
Now,
Every Tuesday until it's not, yeah.
Yeah, when they told you twice a month, somebody wasn't telling you the truth.
More of a suggestion.
That's right. Just like 2-hour meetings.
yeah, they way past productive at 3 now.
What would be important for us to know is, like, on some of these items that we gave as a suggestion to use out of unassigned fund balance, if you want to do any of that, that's gonna touch on some of these departments. But it would be helpful to know if you like that idea, if not, and if,
You actually, you're leading into, I got a couple of quick questions before we even get there, and I know it's early, but, so we talked about using some of the unassigned fund balance and the suggestions you mentioned for some of the different reasons. Critical pieces, I would imagine it wouldn't be in the budget if it wasn't considered a critical item. But then if we're getting down to the nitty-gritty and having to make decisions, I'd like to understand on some of the suggestions on the one-time pieces. What you or the heads of these departments would say, yeah, this is, we need to
Right.
address this, this is vital that we address this, here's why. So I think I'd like to hear those types of reports coming from. It's a lot easier for me to prioritize and work with you when I understand. I know we had those meetings early on to talk about what do you want to do. You know, here's your wish list, put it together. But now we're starting to get to kind of where the rubber meets the road. So I'd really like the department heads to be chiming in and say, of these suggestions you've made on using this maybe undesignated fund, unassigned, I should say, fund balance for these one-time projects, what are these that are critical and priority, and what are some that maybe could to move down the line to the next year's budget if we absolutely had to, or find a different way to fund.
The real needs and then the real wants.
Right. We're much more eloquent.
No, I agree in that regard. Public Works, you have my attention when you've got a backhoe and a plow truck to the tune of $150,000. Off the cuff, $15 grand for pickup, dump trailer, spray pump and pump. I'd love to actually try to put that in this budget, knowing that I might be able to free up something for something else of that need. But it's a good starting point to be able to set those priorities, to begin that dialogue. It was 3.5 hours that night.
Right.
They hit us with a pretty dark list of all the things that we need to be able to consider accordingly, so to be able to begin that. Plus, not lose ground on the moving in the direction of the capital improvement plan, to be able to put every piece of moving equipment on a replacement plan that's reasonable, so we can reduce the cost leasing it.
Right.
Or paying for it, bonding it over time.
I'll use the salt shed as the one that I look at. I want to understand, I know we touched on it pretty well in that workshop that evening, but I just want to go back to it to say, it's a pretty big Band-Aid, if that's what this is. And that's why I want to understand, is this a Band-Aid, we're putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound, or are we looking at something where can we, if we're looking to go down the line and maybe consolidate and have a Public Works garage somewhere down the line that includes an adequate location for our salt shed and such, as part of that capital improvement plans, what can we do to limp by with what we have if our end game is to get to a bigger place, a bigger facility? So, I mean, that's the one that jumps out at me.
I'd also like to think in that example that you listed, that our PW director would be able to give us an idea on payoff.
Right.
The fact is, the commodity associated with this year, we spent the considerable amount of time actually chasing lost time or cost associated with only being able to have so much of the commodity on hand.
Mm-hmm.
There's a cost there to our community directly. So in that, being able to stockpile this, he should be able to give us an idea of when's the investment going to pay off for us.
Maintaining service, I think that's one thing that we always talk about, and I think we can all agree that this year was a challenge for those guys. And that's not a point of finger at them. They can't salt if they don't have salt, and that's the thing that was a challenge that we had this year. So, what can we do? And I'm sure the public director would want to weigh in, or works director would want to weigh in.
The dialogue associated with mixing sand salt. Right now, it's a strictly salt arrangement because there's no cleanup on street removal. One of the things I don't see in here was sweeper.
Right.
That Ryan hit us up with in that regard too. That's going to come up. It's going to be able to be addressed one way or the other.
Well, it correlates directly back to our wastewater issues that we're having with different areas getting blocked up because we're not able to adequately clean these areas, and then we get silt, salt, and everything else running down into these wastewater spots, and they got to go running down in there and trying to clean those out. So, if we're not investing on the maintenance end here, we're going to see it come back in cost associated in other places that we fully know what's going to happen.
Right.
So,
And for the listening public, we may have just picked apart the PW department publicly, but I could easily do so with the police department, the fire department. I would like to get to a place where we're replacing a cruiser a year rather than paying for one over 3 years, and you have 3 of those that are constantly in that loop. By avoiding that, you're not paying over time and having the interest incurred. You're ahead if you never get into the point where you actually bring on the debt to be able to do it. So the model that's out there that's had differing levels of support for the fire department is a model that can actually be incorporated for most of our departments by putting them on a set replacement schedule.
And that's why the cruiser isn't listed here, because that would
Yeah.
be a reoccurring cost every single year, so it is in the budget. It's built in the budget.
And it's a phase-in, because
Yeah.
Diane and I've had dialogue on that. We have to pay up 2 years worth of interest on the cruiser that was out there for the financing. Once we get that beyond us, the fact is that we're just buying a cruiser a year. If that is the replacement schedule that's actually deemed necessary when the time comes, we will eliminate those payments over time and actually just get to what we're needing. You know, it's same thing. When you get a PW pickup truck, you buy one today, if it's got a 7 to 10 year life on it, the fact is, we shouldn't have to deal with it again until 10 years down the line. Just let's not pay for it over 3 years. Let's incorporate it in the budget and actually be able to have that level of purchase within the current year versus the finance charges.
Right.
It's a slippery slope. I realize that. I mean, the communities that are in a better financial position are those that actually are not in the position where they're bonding stuff over the 10 to 20 years. That's just,
Giving away money.
yes.
Yeah, let's call it what it is. It's giving away money.
So, anybody in preparation for next week's meeting, anything that you knowingly see that you might have a question on or would want more information going into that discussion?
Who are our first three again for next week? I'm sorry.
Library, police, and fire.
Police, fire, and
Library.
library, thank you.
You know, key components, the
Yeah.
positions charts on the back.
Yep.
We have more materials than we know what to do with, so if you have
I
any questions.
apologize for that.
That's, well,
No,
they're
you
gonna
don't.
ask. As soon as you don't put it, people are gonna ask. And I'm notoriously gonna be that guy that asks, so I don't have a problem with it. The more, I mean, I didn't bring last year's by chance. This effect is, there's a lot of stuff in there that you can actually get a trend over the period, because you look at a 3 to 5 year period of time, if you didn't spend it, why are we continually increasing the budget with a creep effect? It may not have a big amount of impact, but when you do it over a 3 year term, there is a certain level. So,
I have a question on the schedule, the budget schedule.
yep,
You scheduled Saturday, June 17th for the municipal budget public hearing. I don't think that we actually scheduled a time on that Saturday. At least I don't recall. Do you?
I don't think we
I was
did.
wondering if you,
no, that was,
I don't recall us.
Mr. Albert suggested a weekend to try to see if we could get a few
we
things.
just
I
want
think
to
if
get it on
I
the
think-
calendar, so I was
Right.
kind of,
So no, that's a good question. So, I mean, I think the idea is to try to capture folks who normally can't attend a weeknight evening. So ideally, if it's a Saturday in June, I'm trying to think of, it's gonna be extracurricular activities usually happen in
The week
the
following
morning.
graduation, so tread lightly.
Yeah, I was gonna say, morning, would be extracurricular activities, so, I don't know, I think putting in the afternoon on a Saturday, we're gonna get, the attendance may not be that high. I would be inclined to do a morning
like 10
versus,
o'clock.
I just wonder how many people are gonna, I mean, thoughts here, anyone? Afternoon versus morning, I'm in favor of morning, but I also realize that they may,
10 a.m. to me is midday, so I like it.
yeah,
In June,
You don't work nights.
In June, you're gonna have baseball and all kinds of stuff.
that's what I'm
going on
saying.
Saturday
I mean,
morning.
I don't think we're ever gonna be able to capture everyone, but I think it gives folks the opportunity who normally wouldn't be available on a weeknight to come out to a workshop and hear, just to say,
How soon do we have to put it on the schedule? Like, time frame, like, set the time.
We don't, I mean, if you want to wait a while and then,
I was gonna say, can we
I-
wait until we find out what
We can.
LJAL schedules are gonna look like?
but even let's just say, for, I mean, since we're talking about it and it was brought up, even, I don't think we're ever gonna be able to capture, I think games are gonna happen all day long. You're absolutely right on that. I think any sort of extracurricular activity is gonna happen all day long. There are gonna be games everywhere. I just wonder, when are we more likely to catch them, the folks who we're trying to catch? Is it gonna be in the morning? People get up and say, yeah, I'm gonna go and actually chime in, then I'll go do my day. And if we were gonna do it, I'd wanna do it earlier than 10. Actually, I think that'd gives people a chance who are gonna wanna participate to try to get there. I'd say if we're gonna do it early, I'd say 9. That way, people will be more inclined to wanna come out and say, it's not gonna cut right into the middle of my day, because you figure it's gonna be a couple hours anyway. So 9 to 11.
God, I hope not.
I hope not too, but
But yeah, like
if
you said,
if
it's at
history is
1
any
o'clock.
indicator,
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think we've ever had a workshop that went under 2 hours.
Yes. AM, let's try for AM on that.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then
Yeah, because I wouldn't want to go to
They'll
some.
have time to decide, so.
Okay, so
We could also throw it out to social media and see what the consensus is, if people would prefer a morning or an afternoon.
yeah, it doesn't hurt.
Sounds like a perfect task.
Sure.
Train times at night.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess more to come.
Knowing that we're rolling out departments at a time, I think we can work on specific recommended cuts, but if there's something of specifics that you might want to defer as they come up, like, I'll use example, the first one is the police communications equipment. If you want to hear that with a bunch of stuff at the end, because there's a meeting that recaps all this type of dialogue to wrap it all together, we can put it on what would be, maybe the list. Lewiston runs a list. The fact is, if there's something you feel vehemently that, no, I really would like to explore this at a later date, see what that says, because we're looking at $1.5 million. We need to have those kind of dialogues. If we're not prepared to do it that night, obviously we need to do it before the final package. We can run that kind of relay if you guys are interested as well too. But again, I'm hopeful that this is a starting figure, not an ending figure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm there with you on that, because the way that the suggestions came around when we kind of got to where we landed, was it $468,000 or somewhere in that ballpark after the unassigned, the suggestions that were made using the unassigned fund balance and the overlay, take this $1.5 million down to like $468,000. Did I hear that right?
Yeah.
No,
Did I? No.
takes it down to about,
$1.1 million.
yeah, $1.1 million.
Okay, so maybe I was snapping during that section then.
You're good, you're good.
No. I thought maybe I heard
I think
that
the
wrong.
486 is the 686 minus the 200,000 overlay.
Okay, so that's where I was pulling that number from somewhere. I didn't think it was
Yes.
imaginary.
Well, no, it is, it does total 686,000.
Right. But then there's the 200,000 from the overlay, so the 486 is what we'd be talking about taking out of unassigned fund balance. Am I correct on that?
That'd be the net impact,
Right.
yes.
Yep, yep.
Off in the 2,755,000,
Right. Yep,
but
yep.
you would still be reducing this budget by 686.
Yep, no, okay, good. So that my math was good,
Yeah.
just a little.
You're good.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. So, I mean, it's not exciting, never fun to look at that, but ultimately, I think we have options, which is a nice place to be, and we haven't started talking about essential wants versus needs, to borrow Chris's line. So I think once we start to kind of dig into the dirt a little bit, it's not as, as bad as we initially thought, which is good.
So by all means, you got plenty of reading material, and Diane and Lydia are at your disposal if you need anything more. I would direct you that way, unless it's a specific question of the department head coming up, just so they can hear it firsthand. You might want to go that approach too, but just trying to keep the chain of command open so she's apprised at least of what we're looking at for the dialogue. Does that seem appropriate?
No, I appreciate that.
Makes sense.
Okay. Next item, Boyle.
Is the department head written reports?
Hold on. I read them and made notes. Yes, Squire. I would like to actually nominate you for the registrar for the town of Lisbon for the next 2-year term, if we could, please. Thank you for the offer, and we are going to gladly accept. I need a
Right.
motion.
I'll make the motion.
No, I'll second.
We got the second right there. How's that? All in favor?
Thank you. 6-0, passed.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Moving right along on it.
You skipped a bunch.
Have any
no,
other reports that you wanted to discuss?
Yeah, I did actually.
Okay.
That's where I was going in the notes.
Excuse me.
This is the police department.
We're here.
Town report, actually. When's that going out?
Town report?
Yes.
We are finishing up with that within the next week or two. We're going out to bid with it. It looks like we're gonna get maybe about 300 copies. Most people are using the electronic one and looking at and viewing it online, so we'll try to get some advertisement out to let people know where to find it.
Okay.
So it's moving along.
Good.
We've got some great pictures. We've got we think, a fantastic cover showing our community and showing our kids and our activities. I think you'll like it.
Thank you, Tara. Next, referring to the police chief's monthly report, I'd like to publicly actually recognize Jared Blake and Charles White, who had received an American Red Cross Public Safety Heroes Award at the Enterskogen Hilton Garden, I believe it was, meeting of April 2016. They were two people from the dispatch directly involved with the fisherman that was stranded out on the river this past summer. Moving to the fire chief's report, Captain Rob Lorette has actually stepped down from his post. I'd like to thank him for his contribution, and at the same time recognize Eric Watson, who's been promoted to the acting captain's position until that becomes available this fall, when that would go out. And the last one I had was, I'd like to see in April Lydia's smiling face here to see if she can't give us a fiscal 2017 kind of recap, bright spots and challenges to try to tie it into the budget before it's actually over. Looking at 10 months actually gone, 8 months gone by as of February, and some of the percentages are kind of alarming just on the revenues. So I'd like her to be able to just give us an update on what she sees for her trends for revenues and expenditures, just to hear from her perspective. That was all I had on this. Next item, 12.
Audience participation for new items.
Anybody? Lisbon won.
Yeah, nice. All right, great
State
job.
playoff game for Unified Basketball will be 6 o'clock Thursday night at Winslow High School, if anybody is interested.
We don't have a workshop, right? Tell me we don't have a workshop.
It's a planning board meeting, and you can tell Dawn I will be absent. I'm sorry.
Dawn will be here.
Okay, so I'm telling.
He's in Hawaii.
He will be very early tomorrow, yes.
Yes.
Okay. Anybody else? Moving right along.
Next item is Councilor Communications.
I'm going to jump in. I want to take a moment to recognize Lisbon Emergency. A couple weeks ago, my daughter unfortunately had to take a ride in one of the Lisbon Emergency ambulances. My wife was taking my daughter en route to the hospital, and my daughter started to get sick right in the car and went downhill fast. And she called Lisbon Emergency. Well, she pulled right into the front of the fire station. She got some help from the fine folks there as well in Lisbon Falls. But just when it's your own family, I can't tell you what a great relief it was to know how quickly they responded and the professional nature in which they responded, how they worked so hard to put my daughter at ease while they were transporting her, and how they also made sure that my wife understood that she was in good hands. So I want to thank you publicly and commend you for your great service, professionalism, and it's much appreciated. Thank you for the service you provide to our community.
Anyone else? Moving right on.
So we passed over appointments, we've done those. It will be the executive session. To go into executive session for 1 MRSA, Section 4056D, labor negotiations, and 4056E, consultations with legal counsel.
Will we be needing to come back here?
Are we gonna have a vote?
Yeah. No,
Probably not.
Okay.
Okay, so
I
no
don't
vote.
know, I don't think so.
Not likely to have one?
Not likely, but it could happen.
Okay.
That's said, I will entertain a motion to go into executive session, and we will not be coming back here.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Order pass, 6-0.
Good night, guys.
Good night. Karen, thanks again.
Do you want to go next door, or just stay?
We stay right here.
Just say
You'll
here.
stay here? Yeah, let's just stay here.
As soon as she cuts the power.
I don't wanna have to run my
Yeah, right?